My name is Jay Mitchell. I'm with the Indiana Department of Transportation, and we are here today to talk about the statewide Transportation Improvement Program. This is a virtual town hall meeting for the statewide Transportation Improvement Program, which is commonly called the STIP. The STIP is a 4-year federally required programming document, which outlines all of the projects that INDOT will be undertaking for the various phases during the next 4 years. We also list in this document the anticipated or estimated cost that we will be expending on those projects. What you will not find in the STIP are projects that are 100% paid for with state dollars, as they're not required to be a part of this STIP. The STIP is a federally required document. It's required for us to do this, like other DOTs across the nation, so that we can receive the federal funding that then is used to pay for our road improvements throughout the state of Indiana. Thank you for joining us tonight. And I would like to start this meeting off by discussing the fact that we have a panel here to answer questions. And our panel will consist of Roy Nunnally, and Roy is with our planning and technical programming team. And Michael McNeil is here as well. He is our STIP coordinator for INDOT. And April Lucky is the programming person at INDOT that takes care of our programming of projects behind the scenes, as well as joining us is Brandon Bergoa, who's working the boards tonight, but he's also the bike and pedestrian planner for the state of Indiana. So if you have bike and pedestrian questions, he's the man to ask. And we have Jason Castile here tonight as well. There's Hi. Jason. And Jason is with he's a transit planner with our transit program for INDOT. Vanetta Keefe will be joining us as well tonight. Vanetta is the rail program manager at INDOT. And those are our primary participants for our panel tonight. We will be fielding questions their way as they come in, and I will try to answer a few questions myself if I can. The format for tonight's meeting will be a presentation that we will start out with. The presentation is a little bit long, so what we're going to do is break it up from time to time, stop, and then open the floor up for some questions, take a few questions, try to provide answers to you as well, and then go back to the presentation. And after that is finished up, we will open up the entire floor to question and answer or comments. We do want your comments as well. We would prefer that the comments and questions be directed towards the STIP itself. If you happen to have other comments or questions about INDOT in general, we do have a number that you can call, and that is customer service, and it's 1-855-463-6848. I went through that kind of quick, so it's 1-855-463-6848, and that's on our screen here as well. You can also, in your search engine, just plug in INDOT for you, and that will bring you to our webpage where you can make a comment or a question about anything about INDOT in general, and you will receive an answer within a short period of time. Short period of time being about 1 to 3 days at the most. Again, tonight we're primarily focusing on the STIP document. If you have specific questions about a project in the STIP, please bear in mind that there are probably several thousand projects and phases in the STIP, and our panel may not be in a position to answer every single question about a particular project. So if that happens where you give us a question and we need to check further, we will do that behind the scenes, try to get you an answer tonight, but if we can't, we will get that answer and we will post it on our website for you. So at this time, I'm going to turn, I should mention also, sorry, my apologies. If you have a question or comment and you're joining us online, you may post your comment or question in the chat box on the right side screen. If you're joining us by phone, what you do is hit *6 to unmute your phone, and you can ask your question, but we will have an INDOT representative standing by to take your question, because apparently we're not able to actually feed it directly into the meeting tonight. And then that person will then feed the question to myself that I will then refer to the panel for answers. So at this point, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Roy Nunnally. and he has a presentation that he's going to begin with. So Roy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jay. Good evening. My name is Roy Nunnally. I am the Director of Planning and Programming here at INDOT Central Office. I'm going to talk to you about our statewide transportation improvement program known as the STIP. So the first question is, what is the STIP? The STIP is a federally required planning document that covers at least 4 years. Our document goes out to 5. That 5th year is recognized as an illustrative year for federal highway. It is a programming document, not an accounting document. So therefore, it identifies funding by activity type, by phase, whether that's right-of-way, construction, or preliminary engineering, or funding by fiscal year. It includes projects that are federally funded, from Federal Highway Administration to the Federal Transit Authority. It also includes some projects that are 100% state funded, if those projects are deemed regionally significant. When we say regionally significant, what we mean is a project that may have some regional significance, same as if you were to put a hospital or a convention center and it tracks trips throughout the region. There are projects that have that same level of effect. Some local and state funded projects are also included, and these are a list of some of those projects. From non-state jurisdictional highways, INDOT controls interstates, U.S. highways, and state routes, passenger rail and public transit, freight mobility, bike and pedestrian trails, and also national parks, and we'll discuss that in more detail. What is in the STIP and why is it important? In the STIP, there are a number of improvements, from added travel lane projects, whether you're adding a through lane or you're adding some turn lanes, right turn or left turn lanes, or new facilities, building a brand new facility. It also includes roadway reconstruction, where we're tearing down the roadway and rebuilding it, or just resurfacing it. It also includes operational improvements, such as modernized traffic signals, where we're installing traffic signals that can collect data, traffic signals that can also be timed and adjusted to neighboring signals, and also intelligent transportation systems, where we're collecting data and making choice and providing information to the public as to how the system is performing. Operational improvements also includes road diets, where we're taking a facility that may be 4 or 6 lanes, and we're using some of the lanes or repurposing some of the lanes to include bike, pedestrian, parking, and other amenities that improve the flow and safety of that corridor. Also include is interchange improvements, some safety improvements from pedestrian crosswalks, sidewalks, and ramps. Slide corrections, where we're taking corridors that may have some rock slide issues, is on a rocky terrain. Either rocks are sliding onto the road or the road is sliding. Also railroad crossings and geometric deficiencies, where we're looking at sight distance issues. Maybe a roadway is too curvy and there's a lot of incidents, or you can't see over the crest of that roadway, whereas it's very dangerous for non-motorized travelers. Also in the STIP are projects that include bridge, from new bridges and structures to rehab to reconstructions to various maintenance, including inspections and bridge paintings. It also may include debris removal, where you have technicians that are at the ground level of a stream or underneath the bridge to remove sediments and other things that are blocking the flow. It also includes small structures. Small structures are bridge structures that are less than 20 feet, and culverts, pipes, and pipelinings. But it's just not roadways. We also have some non-roadway improvements that are included in our STIP document. That include transit and passenger rail that use federal funds. This includes transit agency operational assistance, the purchases of buses and rail cars, and also I can't remember the name of that. I'm sorry, but equipment purchases that you can use to buy tickets and radio and communications. Infrastructure, buildings and bus shelters, emergency repairs. It also includes non-roadway improvements, such as improvements made to parks, trails, dedicated bike facilities, corridors and projects that have planting and landscape, and other studies and technical planning studies. So why is the STIP important? Well, it's a comprehensive list of multimodal projects, programs, and phases over multiple years. A lot of times when you're looking at the STIP document, you may notice that a project may be listed multiple times. It may have different funding sources. It may be in a different phase. For example, if it's in the preliminary engineering phase where a lot of the design work and scoping and data collection is being done early on, you might just see that project in a specific year. And then the following year, you might see that same project where we are purchasing right-of-way. Then another year, you might see where we're actually constructing it. So it might be listed multiple years. It is also important because we're closely coordinating these with our planning partners, our resource agencies, our transit providers, and also with the various other planning documents that we'll discuss later. It does establish a roadmap for both short and long-term plans for continuous progress. And most of all, it is federally required for the approval of federal funds, documents, and permitting. Jay, I'll turn it over to you with additional questions. Not sure, Jay, if were you able to get on? All right. Look like we're having some technical difficulties. So at this time, we are taking questions. You can, Jay, are you back?
Yes, I'm back. Sorry, I hit a wrong button and I got knocked completely out of the transmission, so I have returned. Thank you for taking over for that brief problem. This is kind of like live TV in that if you make a mistake, we don't record in advance and correct those mistakes. So made one, try not to make another. We do have a few questions at this time and a few comments as well. And I will see what we can do with those questions. The first one happens to be from Darla. Darla has a very good question. How does a STIP project differ from a regular project, or do they? Well, not much. Almost all of our projects are designed in one way to either improve or maintain the current transportation system in Indiana. And that's all of the system, transit, as well as bike ped facilities and roads themselves. So most of the time when you see state dollars being spent, that's going to be probably more likely on smaller ticket items that the federal government doesn't necessarily participate in, and that would be mowing grass and cutting trees that might be overhanging our highway, that sort of thing. A lot of maintenance type items, changing light bulbs on the lighting system as well. The larger projects almost always use federal funds to some degree. And so, yes, there's not a lot of difference. Darla also followed up with another question, and she said, and since these are federal dollars, how much of a hand does Federal Highway have in determining projects? The quick answer is the federal government, Federal Highway Administration, does not really have a hand in choosing which projects INDOT will pursue. What it does have is a hand in how we will pursue those projects. So if we take the federal dollars, we're required to meet all of the federal requirements and regulations associated with those dollars. So in many cases, that's going to mean that we will be doing first some sort of an environmental analysis, and we will be doing some sort of many other analysis as well before we can advance the project. And each one of those steps may require a federal action where they actually sign off to make sure that INDOT is following the regulations. Now, There are a few times or a few instances where the federal government does have a little more say, and that happens to deal primarily with the funding source. Some funding sources are directly tied to specific actions that INDOT has to undertake if it wants to use the funding. And I apologize, I tend to use a lot of acronyms, so I'll try not to do this here. But safety projects, generally found listed as something called HSIP in the STIP. Those are projects that have to be spent. The federal dollars have to be spent on a project that improves safety on the highway network or the roadway network. The last few years, we have been focusing on pedestrian activities at intersections with those type of funds. So improving the intersection with regard to safety for pedestrians. You may also see, if you're driving the roads, where we are doing a little more rumble strips. And that's also something that will be an HSIP type funding. There's also something called congestion mitigation air quality, CMAQ for short. And those funds are only spent on projects that would in some way result in improvements to air quality, but they can only be spent in areas where there is a problem with air quality or has been in the past. So I hope that answers your question. By and large, the federal government does not really dictate what INDOT will build or will not build, as long as we follow all the regulations that they've set in place. So our next question is, well, I have a comment actually, and it's from Jason, and he is glad to see green modes of transportation improvements for bike lanes and pedestrians. Yes, and you will see a few more of those throughout the state. INDOT is turning a corner. We're starting to do more of those type activities in urbanized areas, primarily where it matters the most, and if it's possible and feasible, and if it's desirable. So we are building more of those. That's sort of a sea change for us, because about 15 years ago, we wouldn't even consider doing such a thing. But now we know that the public wants that, and that it is a safe mode of transportation. We try to make that as useful as possible for those people that wish to ride other modes of transportation rather than just cars and buses and so forth. So another question that we're getting from Marla: are all federally funded projects in the STIP? If a project is removed from federal funding, is it automatically removed from the STIP? The answer to your question is, for the next 4 years, if we will be spending any federal dollars on any project or any phase of a project, that project must be listed in the STIP, and that STIP must be approved by Federal Highway Administration, or an amendment to the STIP must be approved by the Federal Highway Administration. If we happen to remove federal funding, we are free to remove that project from the STIP. Doesn't mean that we won't do it. We may fund it with another source of funds, which might be your local tax dollars or state tax dollars through the funds that you pay the pump. So in that case, not all of them are, but most are. And if it uses federal funds, it definitely has to be in the STIP. And that's the bottom line. Oh, the STIP, by the way, has to be fiscally constrained. And that means that it has to, we have to anticipate the amount of funding. It is not a budgetary document, but it must be reasonably close to what we anticipate the revenues will be from the federal dollars and our own dollars, and then whether or not we can pay for the projects in the STIP or the phases in the STIP. Todd has a question, and his question is, I expect the improvements now being made to the South Shore Service, NICTI, will help the Northwest Indiana economy. What is the next passenger rail project INDOT is looking to implement? I'm not in a position to answer that, but Vanetta Keefe is in a position to answer that. So I'm going to turn the floor over to Vanetta to answer your question, Todd.
Hi, if you're talking about the NICTI double track and the Westlake extension, those are two projects that we will have going on for a couple of years. If you want to look at what our plans for, we have, there is a document on our website. It's the passenger rail study, and it looks like, and it outlines what options would be available for passenger rail in the state. So right now, we're not looking for projects beyond the Westlake extension and the NICD double track, but we do have a Patrick Engineering study on our site, which may give you some ideas of what we're looking to do.
Thank you, Vanetta. I appreciate the answer. Wendy has a question or a comment, and she's curious, are the roundabouts on state roads actually helpful or a waste of funds? They're not a waste of funds. They are helpful. They improve the flow of traffic and they improve safety. It may not seem like that the first time you encounter a roundabout, but over time you'll see that they work very well and very efficiently. Most of the time, almost all of the time, they work very efficiently. And they're so efficient and so they work so well for us that you're seeing more of them. So it's definitely a method that we are applying and aggressively in many places. You will see more roundabouts. I have one more question, then I have to get back to the presentation. And Chris Lane asked, can we get a copy of this presentation? Yes, you can. It will be posted on our website. You can get a copy of the presentation. And I believe this particular presentation will also be posted as well. This will be taped, recorded, and posted as well. Having said that, I'm going to return to Roy Nunnally, and he will then resume the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. All right, so the next section is, how is the STIP developed? Our STIP is developed on a 2-year cycle and is amended monthly. The STIP requires extensive coordination with our various planning partners, from MPOs, RPOs, to also locals. Indiana has a very collaborative and decentralized and centralized programming process. If you look at the graph, you'll see at the top, you have multimodal freight plans. We also have bike and pedestrian plans, long-range transportation plans. Our long-range transportation plan is not project-specific. We also have the 20-year next level roads plan, which is about a $60 billion plan for 20 years. And that gets funneled down to our kind of a 10-year window. So you look at it, it's a 20 to 20 plus year, feeding into like a 10-year window where we're looking at the asset plans. Some of our assets, we have to plan out 10 years to make sure that the conditions are meet our life cycle cost and is optimized. So we look at it within 10 years, and whether a bridge needs to be replaced, redecked, or pavement needs to be redone, it's in that 10-year asset management plan, which lists a lot of our goals. At that stage, things move down towards our 5-year construction plan, which we consider to be our state transportation improvement program as well. So we made that pretty much one and the same. But stakeholders and public involvement opportunities are included. As we noted, this is a very collaborative, decentralized, and centralized program approach. Typically, we have regional planning coordination meetings in the late spring, early summer, where we speak with some of our local, some of the local officials, our RPOs, MPOs, and district partners, and we meet at one of the districts and we talk about any of the trends, concerns, project needs, and answer questions and things of that nature. The district is responsible for opening the call for projects every year about the 1st of July, and that lasts out to January the 15th. Again, that 5th year is a rolling 5th year, so we're doing a call, they're looking for that 5th plus year. At that time, the district performed needs analysis based on input that they have received from the regional meetings, from local officials, from any public comments they've received, and even the information that we provided them from our analysis. But the districts perform additional needs analysis and then do some preliminary scoping work where they estimate some of the cost, and then they prioritize the projects based on all this information received. At that point, the project is submitted by the INDOT districts, prioritized for their district areas, to central office. And there's two groups that looks at this. One is the program management group. The program management group is kind of a governing, kind of director level body of staff that is responsible for our asset management and construction plan. They determine what the goals are. They work with the finance to determine how much of the finance is going to go to bridge, safety, roadway, mobility. At that stage, all the projects are submitted to the four asset teams that you see here. There's the bridge asset team, the roadway asset team, which looks at some of the pavement, the geotechnical correction, which is the site distance we talked about earlier, as well as rock slides. And then you have the mobility asset team that is responsible for a lot of the added capacity type improvements, traffic signals, ITS, those type of improvements, and also bike and pedestrian facilities as well. And then safety kind of catches a lot of different things depending on the funding source. It can be anywhere from mobility to pavement, to bridge improvements, to walkways and things of that nature. Each of these asset teams are made up of representatives of each district's plus a few divisions within our central office. So very talented group. At that level, the asset teams, the projects are selected by a statewide asset management process in coordinating with our MPO partners. And at that stage, they're charged with looking at project prioritization at a state level. Once that's done, additional public and stakeholder input opportunities are presented, and then the plan itself is approved by Federal Highway and Federal Transit Administration. This is kind of just a list of how we developed the STIP and the timeline. It's very involved. Usually takes a little over 7 months. Kind of October, November timeframe. We're drafting lists, and we're going back and forth with our MPO partners with their transportation improvement program, which is more regional versus our statewide transportation improvement program. So things have to line up with that as far as the federal projects and some of the regionally significant state projects. So that kind of goes on and back and forth for about 4 or 5 months. But in that process, we're developing the STIP verbiage, targets for bridge and pavement performance, as well as what are the funding targets as well as for each of the fiscal years. At that stage, we do a 45-day comment period, which we are in right now. I believe our 45-day comment period started April 9th, and it will end May 25th. Once we close the comment periods, we will again processing those comments, responding to those comments, adding the comments and the responses to the appendices of the STIP, and making revisions. Once we've completed that, then again, we continue to coordinate with our MPO partners, but we provide that document to Federal Highway and Federal Transit Authority for their review and approval, which is usually about a 30-day window. Who's involved in the development of the STIP? You are. You as the public, your voice matters. So we have plenty of opportunities for public involvement, from our long-range transportation plan that extends out 20 years to our freight mobility, our 10-year asset management plan, to the American Disability Act transition plans for pedestrians, for pedestrian ramps and things of that nature, as well as corridor vision studies. But there's plenty of opportunities where you're looking at district open house meetings, virtual town hall meetings such as this. There's opportunities at INDOT, at MPOs and RPOs that may host technical meetings. And also we coordinate with our freight and logistic industries. There are a lot of hands involved in the development of the STIP, from INDOT district offices, which has a number of divisions, to our metropolitan planning organizations we have, and our regional planning organizations. As far as our district offices, we have 6 district offices that covers the state of Indiana. Our district serves as our front line in terms of direct coordination with key stakeholders, local officials, and citizens. Again, they do manage the call for project, which opens up in July of each year and ends January 15th. And they often work directly with the MPO as far as their tips and project manager. A lot of the project managers are housed at each of the districts. So they do a lot of coordination with the MPOs. They also participate in public and open participate in MPO technical advisory and board meetings that are typically open to the public. And also they're active, as we mentioned, in each of the 4 asset management teams. MPOs are also our front line as well and serves as our primary source for local and regional public and stakeholder outreach. MPOs are, policy boards of organizations designed to carry out the planning process for their regions. And they serve as the forum for local governments to provide short and long-term plans to address transportation-related safety concerns. Again, they facilitate board and technical meetings that are open to the public. Some MPOs have meetings every month. Some have it every other month, quarterly. And we have one MPO that does their meetings scheduled twice a year. So if you go down to the www.indianampo.com, you can find out more information about the MPOs and the meetings that they have set up for the regions that you're interested in. RPOs, similar to MPOs, carry out transportation planning process for more small and non-metropolitan urban and rural areas. They too also support district offices and statewide planning efforts and processes. They do a lot of the coordination for local planning, land use, and economic development activity. And again, they are at the table when we're doing these regional meetings so that they're giving us input as to what are the future needs, thinking beyond 5 years. And they also help us in reviewing some of the local throughfare plans for their regions. They do participate in providing input into the annual call for projects. And you can find more information on the RPOs across the state. We have 15 of them across the state. If you go to www.iarc.cc, and IARC stands for Indiana Association of Regional, can't remember what that C stands for, I apologize. Next slide. Jay, I turn it over to you for more answers and questions.
Thank you, Roy. I'd like to remind everybody, if you're calling in and you'd like to pose a question to us, what you need to do is hit *6 on your phone. An INDOT representative will be standing by to take your question and relay it to us in the queue. And if you happen to be joining in on the computer itself, you can enter directly into the comment field on the right side of the screen. I have a very quick follow-up question for Chris. Not question, but answer for Chris. And he wanted to know if he could get a copy of the presentation. And I've since been given the link. So Chris, if you're paying attention, here's the link. It is www.indot.gov/INDOT/4084.htm. And it's posted on the screen here for you as well. So Chris, that's for you. If you want to directly grab that presentation and get a copy for yourself, you're welcome to do so. So again, if you have a question, please enter in by unmuting your phone. If you're by phone, by hitting *6 on your phone, and INDOT representative will be there to answer your question, or to actually take your question and relay it to everyone so we can answer it here. And if you would like to make a comment or a question on your computer, you may do so in the chat box on the right side of the screen. At this point, I don't see any new questions coming in or comments. So what I'm going to do is turn things back over to Roy so he can continue with the presentation, and in a while we'll make another break as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. And that IARC stands for Indiana Association of Regional Councils. I apologize. The next stage is how can I access STIP projects? One way, I think someone asked a question, what's the difference between like a STIP and just a regular project? Again, the STIP is the federally funded activities in some of the 100% state funded projects. If you go to Next Level Roads, if you type in Next Level Roads, you will get a chance to view this interactive map. In it includes a comprehensive list of projects, including the STIP. Unfortunately, you can't distinguish the STIP from the others, but you can see all the active projects. And this is key because a lot of times the public, may not really have a strong concern as to if it's a federally funded project or a state funded project. They just want more information on their project. And so this is a good source to go to see what's going on in your area of interest. And you can, this map is very interactive. You can click on either the little dots or pins on there and drill down and get more information. You can also filter this through by district, by active, or funded projects to future projects, and by program from, bridge, or if you're just interested in local or roadway or mobility type projects, you could just show just those projects and where those are located at. And you can either type in, again, Next Level Roads, Indiana, and this will lead you to this map, or you can type in ENT A, P as in person, P, S, .indot.in.gov, /DOT maps, and /NLRI. To get a more direct listing of what's in the STIP, you can visit our STIP document itself. You'll find a lot of projects listed in there, sorted by county and by other attributes. But this will tell you only what's in the STIP. So that's a good source to get that. And you can get that through the project listing linked at in.gov /INDOT /3132.htm. How can I provide input, or how can you provide input? You can get involved. You can attend public meetings, connect with your area MPO, RPO, or district office. You can sign up for our email communications as well. And you can get that through our, if you are interested, go to our Gov Delivery email sign up at www.in.gov /INDOT /3074.htm. You can also share your thoughts about our STIP through our STIP comment form at in.gov /indot /3132.htm. You can also go through our email program coordinator. That is draft STIP, one word, at indot.in.gov, and through our mail through our mail process. For just general questions, we also have INDOT for You, which is an online tool that we use for input. It comes in two flavors. You can get it in online, which you can go to indotforyou.com. That's INDOT 4 or you can just dial in and at 1-855 INDOT 4 you. And each one of these will take you to our central repository, whether it's a STIP, whether it's a pothole, whether it's flooding, whatever the case may be. They will process and answer, get you a response to your question. If it's a STIP, it is directed towards us as well. And I believe that's all the slides I may have at this stage, and I will turn it over to Jay. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy, for the presentation. At this time, we will open the floor up for comments or questions. And I think we have a couple of comments in the queue, which might be posted very soon for everyone to see. And if not, we will discuss them soon. I want to give a heads up to Vanetta Keefe, because one question I think refers to rail, questions that we'll be referring to you. So Vanetta, be ready for that coming your way. And so that question is from Carla. And Carla is asking, is there anything about rail in this 5-year plan? Light rail for commuting around Indy, higher speed rail to connect cities in Indiana like Crawfordsville, Fort Wayne, Gary, South Bend, Evansville, etc. And even further, connections to Chicago, St. Louis, Cincinnati, Louisville, etc. Seems like we could take a lot of pressure off of our highways this way. Vanetta, are you there? Can you answer Carla's question and comment at this time?
Yes. Hi, Carla. That's a great question. Actually, we are currently writing the state rail plan, and there is a portion in the state rail plan that deals with passenger rail. So questions like that would be more appropriate to be included in our state rail plan. We have one final public meeting that's scheduled for May 19th. If you would send us your email, I will get you an invitation to that meeting.
Thank you, Vanetta. Appreciate it. Chris was unable to get the link before, so we're going to repost that link for the meeting itself, not the meeting, but the presentation. And it's available to anyone that would like to look it over or download it. So that link is going to be coming up before too terribly long here. But just to kind of repeat that link, it is www.indot.gov/INDOT/4084.htm. So I'd like to remind everyone, if you have a question, please, if you're calling by phone, hit *6 to unmute your phone. The INDOT representative will be standing by to take your question or your comment and refer it to in the queue so that we can ask that or answer that question. And if you're online, just simply the chat box on the right side of the screen. So at this point, I do have a comment from Todd. Actually, it's just a comment. So Todd made a comment, and we appreciate your comment. And at this point, we will still be here to answer any questions that come through. We have several minutes left in the meeting. We encourage everyone to submit comments if you have them, or questions if you have them. And if you have a particular project that you see in the STIP itself, and the STIP is available, as Roy said, online, you can go through the STIP and you can look by county to see what, and by roadway itself, and to see what is going to be coming forward in your particular area. And if you have a comment on that, or you want to find out more about the project, you can certainly contact us and we'll be able to connect you with a project manager who could get you more information about the specific project. So that's what we're here for tonight. Again, press *6 to unmute, and the chat box on the right. And I'm waiting to see if there's any questions that come through. And if not, we will continue the meeting until there are questions. We want to make sure everyone has a chance to ask a question or make a comment. And we might discuss some of the critical things that are that we deal with the STIP itself. There was a question earlier that had to deal with what sort of federal requirements must we meet. The STIP itself is a federal requirement. To receive the federal dollars, we must have this STIP document put together. It is a 4-year document, as Roy noted, but in Indiana, we do one better. We give you a 5th year on that STIP. The Federal Highway Administration only recognizes the first 4 years. The 5th year is actually the 5th year of INDOT's production plan. And we post that in there to give the public an opportunity to see what's sort of in the pike, or what's coming down and what will be moving into the STIP in the future. We did discuss what happens if something changes for the STIP itself. Sometimes a project will run into some sort of a problem while they're developing it. You could run into utilities you didn't find or didn't locate earlier, any number of things, and in which case the project will be stalled temporarily, sometimes longer than temporarily. We always have a backbench of projects that we can push forward should that happen. So what we'll do in those cases is pull a project out, reschedule it at a later time, and then pull another project forward that we can then work on, so that we don't lose any opportunity to receive federal funds. At INDOT, like many other states, we try to use every federal dollar that we can. We try to obligate those dollars, because if we fail to do so, we can be penalized. The Federal Highway Administration will provide us with less funding in the future. So we're very, very strong on getting everything we can programmed that is reasonably able to move forward. So we do have a question about rural bridges. If we will put that on the screen, I'll read that one for everyone. And it's a phone question about rural bridges. The average age of a bridge in Wabash County are 45 years old. How does this plan address those bridges? At this time, I might turn this question over to April Lucky, but I can tell you that in Wabash County, if it's a state highway bridge, it will be listed in the STIP if we're going to make an improvement on the bridge. If it is a local bridge that's not on the federal aid system, it is likely a bridge that will be paid for with local dollars. But I'll let April address this a little more. April, can you take this, please? April, I'm afraid I can't hear you. I hope others can. I
Great.
don't know.
I'm sorry. I was muted.
Okay. That's okay. I
I'll
knocked
start
myself
over.
out of the meeting earlier. So.
I'm so sorry for that. Our local projects division at INDOT puts out an annual call for local projects to all cities and counties for road and bridge projects that they are requesting federal aid for. And once the call is closed, they take all of those applications and go through them, and they're scored based on a scoring criteria. And I can't tell you what that particular criteria is. They're scored, and then based on how much money they have per year, then they will assign federal dollars to those projects. So that's how your local non-MPO projects get funded. In our current STIP document, or current draft for Wabash County, there are two, I'm looking real quick, there are two county bridge projects in there for replacements. So I don't know how many there are. I don't know if you're looking at a particular bridge, but that's how the process works. So.
Thank you, April. I might point out for our listener here that just because a bridge is 45 years old doesn't make it unsafe or not a good bridge in any way. Each bridge in Indiana is inspected at some time, usually every 3 years. And during that inspection, they determine whether, one, the bridge is safe, can it maintain the current load rating that it has. And also, we come up with a sufficiency rating that tells us what the condition of the bridge is, whether it needs work in any particular part of the bridge, and so forth. So all bridges are inspected in one form or another throughout the state on a regular basis. So this bridge, if it is operational, should be safe. And if it is not safe for a certain load limit, if it's a county bridge, I have seen where counties will restrict the load limit on that bridge until such time as they can make repairs or find sufficient funds to replace the bridge. INDOT does that to some extent, although we're a little bit, I don't want to say we're better, but we've got a lot of experience managing our bridges. We have far more than any other local entity in the state. So we generally keep on top of that. On top of, and to point out, we also have a performance measure for bridges in the state of Indiana on the state highway system with regard to the national highway system. And we have set targets, and we will not let our bridges fall below a certain target as far as their operational ability and ability to carry loads and so forth and safety. So in Indiana, on our state highway system, you can be reasonably assured that our bridges are safe. And they can be old and they can still operate well. So anyway, we do have a question from Marla, or comment, and that may go on the screen any second now, but it is the federal dollar split on LPA 80-20 or 90-10? In almost every case, the money, Marla, is split 80-20. There are a few instances, and there are very few, where the split would be something other than 80-20. In some cases with the HSIP, those are the safety projects. Those are often 90-10, so the state of Indiana or the local government will put in 10% of the cost. And in rare cases, there are some projects that are actually 100% federally funded. They are few and far between. We would like to see more of those, but we don't have that many. Sometimes they'll come through the stimulus program, but not always. So occasionally you will get those. But in general, the answer to your question is, in almost every case, it's going to be an 80-20 split. And we have a question from Kim. Thank you, Kim, for your question. I anticipated that you would be submitting a question, Kim. And Kim asks, can you talk about the relationship between the long-range plan, modal plans, and the STIP? How are funding amounts and priorities set? How do you decide how much dollars goes to which project types? I'm going to start out by turning the floor over to Roy to address this question. We may also bring some of our other panelists to help as well. So Roy, can you take this question?
Sure. A few things. Our long-range plan is not project specific. It's more policy based, and for select modal plans as well, whether that's bike and pedestrian, those activities. But how fundings and priorities are set. For example, you said, how do you decide how much dollars go to which project types? And again, we have basically the asset teams. So we have the program management group, which are made up of directors from different professions, and our executive funds team. And so what ends up happening is that our executive funds team, they may get an amount that we're going to get for each fiscal year. So that in the STIP, there are 5 fiscal years. And they may say in year 1, there's, $1 billion, in year 2, $1.2 billion, $1.5 billion, whatever the case may be. And so they determine what funding goes to the fiscal years. And then it's the actual program management group team that decides what percent of that $1 billion that we've been approved for will go towards safety, will go towards mobility, which also include bike and pedestrian, as well as roadway improvements and pavement. And what ends up happening is oftentimes, for example, they will play with that until we might have some targets that we're trying to hit. For example, we're trying to hit a certain target for bridge performance. And so they will look at that and, hold on one second, we got some drilling going on. Let's shut the door real quick. They will look at that and determine, if we invest X dollars, what is the performance of that asset's going to be? Or they may look at, we may have some high-end added travel lanes or new construction projects. and we may only have X dollars, and that's going to be maybe $200-300 million, and we have $100 million. So what can that buy us? So it goes back and forth with those the program management group. Each asset team, as again, the projects have been prioritized with a score, and each time that a funding is moved around and X go to safety, they'll just go down the list until they run out of funds, and then they'll analyze that to see what the impacts are going to be. So that's one way that they how we decide how much money goes to what type of projects. But it's not really broken down by, we're going to spend X dollars on this particular type of improvement. It's a group of improvements, and they determine how much funds goes to those groups, and then at that stage, how the projects are prioritized, both by the asset teams and the districts. They'll just go down the list until they run out of funds for that particular group, and then again reanalyze to see if it hits our goals and targets. So that may have answered part of your question. Someone else may be able to provide additional detail.
I want to point out that we are starting to wind down on the time that we have available. We will stay online as long as we can for at least 10 minutes after this meeting to answer any follow-up questions that might come through, but the meeting will probably come to an end at some point. So I did want to point that out. As Roy said, we have targets, we have performance measures. We set targets for each performance measure, and funding, while not dedicated specifically to a particular item, is then generated to those items based on the performance how we're doing on those targets and what we might need to place more emphasis on. There are a couple times where we do actually set funding aside. Actually, the federal government does that for us through the HSIP funds, which are safety funds, and also through the CMAQ funds, which are dedicated to improving air quality in the state. So those funding sources are indeed dedicated to specific areas. And in that area, there is a little bit of latitude. Safety is basically pure safety. CMAQ, when it comes to air quality improvements, a number of things can qualify as an air quality improvement, including to some extent trails, depending on where the trail might be located and what kind of possible mode split there might be where we can remove people from cars and place them on trails. So in those cases, they do indeed assist and help us out for air quality anyway. So I have been told by my director that I missed a question earlier, and if he could put that up again, I will try to address that question. And so we do have a question here. Do all STIP projects get completed? The answer is no. Not all STIP projects get completed. Most of them do. Some projects, as I've indicated, sometimes we run into a problem with the project where there's something we did not anticipate and it delays the project. Eventually it will be completed. But basically, by the time we get to putting something into the STIP, if it hits the right-of-way phase or the construction phase, INDOT will be completing it. In rare occasions, we might be doing the preliminary engineering phase of a project where we're looking at the project itself, the need for the project, what's on the ground, under the ground, what's around the project area. Is there something there that would cause the project to escalate in cost to the point where we wouldn't want to proceed with it any further, at which time we might make a decision to either delay that project, rescope it, or simply eliminate it. So the answer is most every project in the STIP does get completed. There are a couple that do not. I don't know if couple is the right word, but some do not for various reasons. Most often the scope escalated to the point where the project became too expensive to proceed, or we ran into some sort of environmental issue. That's a very common situation where the cost to compensate for the damage that INDOT will be doing to that particular part of the environment, the natural environment or the human environment, will be far in excess of what we would prefer to spend on the project, in which case we will reassess the project and we may well stop the project. So that does happen, but very rare. Do we have another question here for everyone to see? And again, we're coming very close to the end of the broadcast here, so if we do abruptly end, I apologize. But again, I want to point out that you can continue to ask questions and make comments on the STIP for quite some time. The comment period ends within a few weeks, and you can do that through INDOT for you. There, if you go to the STIP page, which is on the INDOT page, just simply in your search engine, the best way, the way that I use it is simply use your search engine and type in Indiana Department of Transportation. You get to that page, and then you use our search engine within that page and ask for the statewide transportation improvement program. That will bring that page up, and in that page there will be a link to make a question or a comment on the particular draft STIP. In fact, we're showing that here, and the comment form is available at in.gov/INDOT/3132.htm. Again, generally by going to our STIP web page, you can find that form fairly easily. If you can't, if you run into any problems and you want to make a comment, you can always use the INDOT for you, or you can even call us on our customer service line, and that is 1-855-463-6848. And there are people there that will be available to answer your questions or direct you to the proper location in INDOT to get your question answered. So again, I appreciate everyone coming today and joining in this meeting. I apologize for some of our quirks where I hit a wrong button at the wrong time and got myself thrown off the meeting. But we're still learning this process. We have 2 more available meetings, and one will be tomorrow night, Thursday, April 29th. I said tomorrow night, I meant tomorrow midday, 1:00 p.m. I'm so used to having meetings at night. So the following 2 meetings will be during the day. First one tomorrow, Thursday, April 29th, 1 p.m. And then the final meeting will be Tuesday, May 4th at 1 p.m. And you are welcome to join in on these meetings. If you thought of a question you didn't have tonight and you want to get that asked and on the record, feel free to join in on the next meeting and pose that question. Or if you want, you can just simply send it in one of our forms, and we will certainly address your question. The final STIP will be published and then submitted to the Federal Highway Administration. We hope to do that sometime in May, early June. Federal Highway will then review the STIP to make sure that INDOT did everything it was supposed to do to make that STIP meet all of the federal requirements. They generally take about 3, possibly 4 weeks to review our document, and then they will report back and either approve our STIP as is or approve it with some recommendations that INDOT might have to do in the future, or they do have the option of just simply not approving the STIP. That generally does not happen, but that is an option that Federal Highway does have. So we reasonably expect that our STIP will be approved in July, just in time for our fiscal year 2022 to begin, which would mean we wouldn't miss a beat getting our projects let and then constructed. Again, I'd like to thank everyone for joining tonight. We will stick around for a little while longer, as long as we can, probably no more actually than 10 minutes. But if there are any follow-up questions, feel free to still try to join in, and we will try to answer those for you. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Again, if you wish to submit a question after today, you can use the STIP comment form at in.gov/INDOT/3132.htm. And it's available on your screen at this time. Again, thank you for joining. And the person in charge of this is Vanetta Keefe. She is the Rail Programs Manager. Her email address will be listed there, as well as probably her phone number. But I would advise at present not to use the phone number, because under COVID, we've done some changes and a lot of us are working from home, so sometimes it doesn't necessarily get right through to you. But again, the emails work almost every single time, so feel free to use that. And if you can't find Vanetta's email in Vanetta Keefe, if you can't find her email address, feel free to email us here through the STIP, and we'll get the question to her, and then she will respond as well. So thank you again. Oh, we have her email address. It's vkeefe@indot.in.gov. Thank you for posting that for me. I didn't want to guess.
What was the question?
Oh, the question was, how does, Carla wanted to know is, how do I email the person in charge of the rail area?
Okay, all
That's
right.
what the question was.
Okay, great. Thank you, Carla.
And I was milling around because I didn't remember your email address off the top of my head. So thank you for providing it. And Vanetta is always happy to answer your questions. The STIP, as we commonly call it. And we posted online the comment form, how you can access the comment form to make further comments or questions about particular projects if you wish to, or anything in the STIP itself. Thank you again for participating. If for any reason we might have missed your question, we will follow up and get that question answered for you. Thank you.